A look at how public policy and recent laws will affect people of faith next on Significant Insights. Hello and welcome to Significant Insights. Good to have you with us today. You know, though our country's laws were grounded on Judeo-Christian principles, as our culture moves away from things of God, public policy follows. Well, today, we're going to be talking with a couple of lawyers who are fighting for First Amendment rights and the rights of people of faith. John Mauck is a partner in the law firm of Mauck and Baker in Chicago, which was established to defend the broken and the religiously oppressed. Jocelyn Flloyd is associate counsel with the Thomas More Society, a not-for-profit national public interest law firm dedicated to restoring respect in law for life, family, and religious liberty. Let's talk about some of the issues of public policy and what's happening in the culture today, especially what's happening in the culture in reference to churches and the Christian community. And Jocelyn, that's an area that you're very involved in with the Thomas More Society.
Yes.
How long have you been involved with Thomas More? And tell me a little bit about your experiences, because it's got to be a lot of stress and pressure.
Yeah, I've been there almost 3 years. And the Thomas More Society originally started as a pro-life law firm. So we run into a lot of the speech issues under the First Amendment that apply to pro-lifers when they want to go out and be on the sidewalk and express the beliefs that they have. And those are not directly tied to the church. They're not directly religious, but it's a lot of the same issues that religious people face when they want to talk about the other issues of the day, whether they're doing abortion discussions from a religious perspective or talking about marriage and what does it mean for our culture, what does it mean for us individually. And we're seeing a lot now grow in terms of persecution of Christian businesses that don't want to jump on the abortion and gay marriage bandwagon that culture is revving up as fast as they can. And so there's more and more Christians are being told you can have your faith in church, you can have your faith in your house, but you can't bring it out here in public. Once you enter the world of business, no, your faith doesn't matter, you have to do the same as everyone else. And that is completely contrary to every intent that the founders had when we started this country and even before we started.
It begins then with a redefinition of First Amendment rights, that your First Amendment rights are not exclusive and not public. Your First Amendment rights are only in private discourse?
Yeah, if you listen to the culture talk about what freedom of religion is, they tend to use the phrase freedom of worship. Most of culture says, okay, you can create your church and you can worship in it, but when you actually look at the text and the intent, it's the free exercise of religion. And for most religious people, Christians and other religions, the exercise of their religion impacts every decision of their daily life.
Well, First Amendment really has nothing to do with worship. It has to do with religious rights.
Exactly.
Am I correct?
But the discussion, terminology matters. So as Christians, we need to be careful to never use the phrase freedom to worship, because we're limiting ourselves. We're limiting our religious freedom to the question of worship, as opposed to the free exercise of religion, which encompasses every aspect of our life.
You know, that's a very good point that I hope our audience is taking to heart and listening carefully, because today words really mean something, because words are using to more closely define what our rights are. I think it's very interesting that for a number of years we had what was called global warming, until global warming was pretty much debunked, and now it's climate.
Oh, and we started with global cooling.
Global
Then
cooling.
we went to global warming.
Yes.
Now it's climate change.
Yeah. Which brings up an interesting point, because in New York there is a controversy going on over the phrase choose life. And people are wanting to ban that on license plates, and I assumed then that that would expand to billboards and to other kinds of ads because that's normally where it would go. But they're wanting to ban the phrase choose life because it can be offensive.
Yeah. With the license plate context, these are specialty license plates. If you see license plates, people are driving around and they're on their license plate, usually to the side, there's a logo that has their university logo or Knights of Columbus or whatever group they want to support with these specialty license plates. So what happened in New York is they wanted to create the Choose Life license plates that we have in multiple states across the country.
Now, when you say they, who are they? Is this a group? Is it a person? Because frequently these things are started not by even a group, by a person, and it builds into something that creates an unconstitutional situation.
We can generalize that it's the liberal arm, the political arm. The Obama administration has definitely been pushing in this direction, and sadly it's become very politicized, and politics has been forced upon believers, and I hope believers are realizing that they have to become political, that their discipleship is a citizenship, and they have to become aware of that because we have no choice. They're coming after us and trying to limit our expression of the gospel, both how we live and how we speak.
Well, yeah, because let me see if I can put this in perspective. You just said the liberal arm, the Obama administration, the liberal arm. So whoever instigated this, basically from the liberal perspective, radical liberal perspective, basically said choose life is offensive. Therefore, the public should not be able to use license plates with that on there because that's offensive. Mm-hmm. So what if conservatives said, well, choose abortion is offensive to us, so let's take it off? Could that happen, Jocelyn?
I don't think so.
Why not?
Because we've seen in culture, we've seen how the road of tolerance is a one-way street. We are required to tolerate them, but they do not have to tolerate us. Their intolerance of our beliefs is in the name of tolerance. So when you look at the source of where the offense is, when they say that if you're putting up choose life, actually one of the arguments in New York was beyond offensive. This is going to cause road rage, which seems outrageous to me. You see a little, it's a kid color drawing of a baby that says choose life around it. And they say this will cause road rage. And then they say, if you are offended by something promoting abortion, choosing abortion, your offense is not legitimate because yours is coming from a background of discrimination, of being anti-woman, of trying to restrict women's rights. And so they look at it and say, you don't have the right to be offended
So basically,
like that.
So basically what you're telling me is that rights today are being defined by the radical liberals. The radical liberals, I want to say radical liberal Democratic Party, but I won't go there because there are some who are not radical Democrats, but by the radical liberal extremists who are creating and achieving the agenda today. Would that be a true statement?
Yes, and I'd include a large segment of the media in there and a large segment of academia. Unfortunately, a lot of our students that are going to secular schools, private and public, are being inculcated into look at these Christians, they're haters, and this kind of poisoning and toxicity. And some people never get over it. Other people, by the time they're 30, wise up, but that's why we have a war here.
After the break, we'll talk about bans on reparative therapy, zoning laws prohibiting religious activities, and more. We'll be right back.
There was one justice who said, if you are in favor of gay marriage, celebrate your victory, celebrate what's happening, but don't celebrate the Constitution because this has nothing to do with that.
Welcome back. Today I'm talking with attorneys John Mauck of Mauck and Baker and Jocelyn Flloyd of the Thomas More Society, and we're discussing the ramifications that our culture's move away from biblical principles is having on people of faith. Let's continue with part 2 of our discussion. Let's talk about another issue, reparative therapy. Basically, it has been decided that for a person who is a homosexual to go to counseling to a group that counsels homosexuals on their homosexuality and how to get out of it has been banned. You can no longer do that in a number of states. Doesn't that again infringe on a person's First Amendment rights?
Well,
that if they want that kind of therapy, that they should be able to find it? Because are we saying now that a person who would like to get out of homosexuality, you're no longer able to do that because it's offensive to the homosexual community?
Well, the lie is, and let me work on terminology like Jocelyn said, the biblical category is homosexual offender, those who engage in homosexual acts. And the society is saying you are a homosexual or you're not. But that's not really the case. You may have same-sex attractions and they may be very strong, but that doesn't mean you can't get out of it. But the Illinois legislature, and this is going to be a trend around the country, and we're seeing it happen, has said legally you can't counsel people to change because it's not possible. The psychological evidence is such. It's built on a false premise.
Or it hinders our agenda. Basically,
does.
what we're saying,
Yes.
it hinders our agenda.
But it
Yes.
also goes against the actual medical evidence. There was a case out in New Jersey where there was a counseling organization that dealt with these issues, and they were sued under a consumer fraud action. But when they actually went to trial, the judge made decisions at the beginning of what was relevant and what wasn't, and most of their experts weren't able to testify. They had an expert from Stanford University who is in favor of gay marriage, who thinks there's nothing wrong with homosexuality, who thinks there's nothing wrong with engaging in that behavior, but says that he has seen in his counseling sessions and in sessions that, the studies that he's seen, there are people who benefit from it. But he was not allowed to even bring that medical evidence up in court because they said that's hate speech from the beginning. You're not even allowed to talk about it.
Well, Dr. Paul Nyquist, president of Moody Bible Institute, has just written a book, and in that book, he basically is saying the culture battle lost. We have lost. We're past the tipping point, and there is going to be persecution. But the church, and I think this is where you're going with this, that the church has to continue at whatever cost to stand according to the authority and the truth of God's Word, because that's what was included in the Declaration of Independence, and we have abandoned that, and we're seeing the awful confusion that is coming as a result of that. So it's more than just a secular battle, and it's a spiritual battle, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we can see that also in the work that we as Christian attorneys do. The number of cases I've heard about where we have good law on our side, we have good arguments on our side, and then we draw bad judges that are completely against us from the beginning. And I don't think that's...
Who are not interpreting law, they're making law based on their prejudice.
Yes. And I don't think that's coincidence. I think that Satan is actively working in that.
Let me tell you a good story about that. We were asked to represent a pro-life organization that did ultrasound. And the zoning authorities of this particular municipality tried to shut down this ultrasound. They were giving free ultrasounds to women in mobile units and parking in a church parking lot next to a high school. And the city came up with a zoning law saying you can't do that more than 3 times a year, just to shut them down. And so I told the director, start praying for this particular judge and there were 25 judges in the Northern District of Illinois. And the Lord, because we had a lot of people praying, got the case randomly assigned to this one judge out of 25 who we knew the Lord and would give a fair and honest ruling. And when he struck down their phony zoning ordinance, he said the zoning ordinance of Elgin infringes on a young woman's right to choose life. And so he used the choose life. He took the right to choose, and he said it includes the right to choose life. So that was a battle won, but it was a spiritual battle. If we didn't have lots of people praying, we probably wouldn't have got that judge.
John, you have been incredibly successful over the years in helping churches in their zoning when they've been bullied by the city or they've been pushed out by the city. If I'm correct, you actually wrote a law that became a federal law.
The Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act was signed into law in 2000. And through that, many churches have been able to get zoning, been able to build mega churches, and small churches, storefront churches have been allowed land use permission from municipalities that didn't want them. There's a lot of, not in my backyard, we don't like these people because they speak in tongues, we don't like them because of their skin color. We just don't like them because they're not paying enough taxes, and there was great oppression. There still is a lot of opposition, but it's a level playing field now.
Yeah. What about the HHS mandate that
That's another example.
Hobby Lobby so far has won, but now what, the Good Sisters of...
The Little Sisters of the Poor.
Yeah, and the ACLU has just filed a lawsuit against the Catholic Church trying to force them to do abortions. Do you think they're going to win that?
I hope not.
Unfortunately, a lot depends on the judges. It's been so politicized that if you draw the wrong judge or on appeal you have the wrong panel, you're going to lose no matter how strong your arguments are, because it's against this cultural trend. And the Supreme Court has set the standard with the gay marriage ruling. They made that ruling up.
The Supreme Court is supposed to interpret law, not make law. But in this case, the law was basically made up by the Supreme Court. They came up with this law. This was not a constitutional interpretation. Is that correct?
I think this is a case of verbal gymnastics to get the result they want and try and make it look like they're interpreting as opposed to making law. But if you actually process what they said and you process the history of these laws, it makes no sense. And in the dissents, there was one justice who said, if you are in favor of gay marriage, celebrate your victory, celebrate what's happening, but don't celebrate the Constitution, because this has nothing to do with
the
that.
Constitution. Final thoughts on our guest views of our country's future when we return. Stay tuned.
And the young people are seeing that science and saying, this is bad.
You know, the Bible doesn't promise us that life as Christians will always be easy. In fact, Jesus said we would have troubles and trials, and he said that we would actually be hated just as he was. But he also told us that he would never leave us or forsake us, and our strength comes from him. For today's final thoughts, I ask our guests what they see for the future of our country. Jocelyn, where does it go from here? Are you hopeful?
I go back and forth. Some days I think it's the end, where we're going to go straight down into a pit of constant persecution. And then I hear stories like the one John just told of the prayer that brought them the right judge. And I see young people getting involved. I mean, the pro-life movement is younger than it's ever been. And the young people are more pro-life than they've ever been. And that has come as a result of science. And so when you look at things like abortions, where you forcefully terminate a pregnancy,
Or gender neutrality, you
Yes.
know, and all of the, yeah.
we look at the science now. I mean, the advantage in talking about abortion that we can carry over to the gay marriage and gender issues is that we now have 40 more years of science that shows the humanity of the baby, the negative impact on the mother, the health consequences, the emotional consequences, and the young people are seeing that science and saying this is bad, not necessarily because they believe in God and they believe that God has created this human, but because science has shown that natural law has consequences. And I think the same thing is true when you look at all the gender issues and the same-sex marriage. We are seeing the impact in families, the results in Canada, the results of the studies here, that children raised in those atmospheres don't do as well as those raised in a traditional marriage, committed mother and father devoting themselves to these children. And as the facts and the science come out, I'm hopeful that people will return to natural law, and hopefully that will also lead them back to
Well,
God.
generally speaking, what happens in any culture is that the pendulum swings, and then it swings so far, and all of a sudden it reaches its peak and it starts coming back the other direction. I remember when, I'm dating myself, color television first came out, and everything was in color, all the commercials were in color, and then all of a sudden there were some black and white commercials because they were trying to get attention again. So I think hopefully the pendulum will swing. People say, we've gone nuts, we're out of control, something has to happen.
And part of it has to do with us. Your question is, are we on the road to hell or the road to heaven? And I think God's created reality such that what we do, what each person who's watching this does in their prayer life, in their giving, in their politics, matters. It will make a difference in lives. And really, God's put it up to us. I agree with Jocelyn. We all hope for the best, and Nyquist says the battle's lost. Maybe, but maybe it just depends on our determination daily to pick up our cross and follow Jesus.
You know, I appreciate law firms like Mauck and Baker, and also the Thomas More Society, and what they're doing, and the cases that they're actually winning today. Jesus said, render unto Caesar's, or give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's. In other programs, I've said something that I believe strongly, and that is that our primary mission to the world is to reach people with the gospel of Jesus Christ and to stand for biblical truth. Those are the two things that I feel are the most important. But in referring to Caesar, we're also citizens of this country in a democracy. And not only do we have an opportunity to take a stand for what we believe, we have a responsibility as Christians to take that kind of a stand. And when there are things such as attacks on the church and things that really affect our faith and are affecting the moral and character of our nation, we need to take a stand. I think it's important that Christians do that. And I don't think that takes away from our other mission, which is a very important mission, and that is that we're preaching the gospel and they're reaching people with the gospel of Jesus Christ. So again, I thank God for people like John Mauck and for Jocelyn. And my prayer is that there are more young people who go into the media industry and into law and into other areas, into the marketplace, so we can have a greater impact on the culture of which we're a part. Thanks for joining me today. Good to have you. I pray that you'll have a good week. I'll see you next time.